Work-related stress, anxiety and depression. Why should we sit up and pay attention? The impact of work-related stress, anxiety and depression is significant. Approximately 7.7% of absence is attributed to these, and the cost is approximately $4 billion to the economy. This organisation currently only undertakes ergonomic, environmental or health and wellbeing assessments when absolutely necessary. Now I know that cost benefit is of importance to the employer, however there are many benefits to keeping an employee in work rather than them being off sick and requiring replacement. In addition, the employee feels supported and as though they're important to the employer and will benefit from remaining in work. There are many symptoms that can be caused by work-related conditions, specifically psychological conditions, and these can be low mood, tearfulness, poor concentration, irritability, poor memory, stomach and chest pain, fatigue and anxiety, to name but a few. Why should we be looking at these conditions? Well, employees are less likely to become short-term or long-term if they feel supported. They'll feel in control of their work, they'll feel in control of their environment. There are financial and productivity benefits for both the employer and the employee, and there are of course the social benefits of remaining in work. Now there's policy context and legislation around supporting people within the workplace, so whilst not necessarily applicable to work-related conditions depending on how they develop, the Equality Act is there to prevent discrimination against people working with medical conditions. This further information can be found on the gov.uk website. There are nice guidelines and nice pathways in supporting people to remain in work or return to work following a period of time off, whether that's with a disability or a mental health condition or with stress from work. Now the Black Report 2008 says that work is good for you and that there are negative things that happen if somebody isn't in work, so financially, socially, that sort of thing. And actually it also says that if somebody's out of work for a long period of time, they're much less likely to return to work. All of these things talk about reasonable adjustments, which is when you make a change to support somebody to remain in work. And the Health and Safety Executive provides significant guidelines on tackling workplace stress. They also have a quick guide to how to do so. Now, some of the less obvious benefits of proactive and participatory ergonomics and support is that an employee feels supported and that they have an element of control over their workday. Now, participatory ergonomics means that everybody works together, so you get the employee involved in developing their environment, the line manager involved, the representatives involved, so health and safety, union if there's a union. And that will help improve somebody's locus of control and their self-efficacy beliefs. So if someone has an internal locus of control, then they believe what they do makes a difference. And if they believe in themselves, they'll have good self-efficacy and will be able to do the job they're there to do. If they have both of these things, so a good internal locus of control and good self-efficacy beliefs, employers will be more able to deal with any challenges or difficulties that come their way. So why is this relevant to our workplace? Well, it's not just ours, but all workplaces. So at the moment, we're currently going through a lot of change, and it doesn't take much to support people through that change process and make sure that they're not at risk. Now, there are a lot more risks in change, and I'll look at those in a second, but it's just very easy to have a discussion with an employee to complete a condition management plan or a wellness action plan, and it doesn't cost anything other than a bit of time, and it could save a lot of time and money in the future. So other risks that I was talking about, so we're going through constant change. Employees tend to have limited job latitude, so they don't have a lot of say of what they do and when. There's high job demand at the moment, and there's not actually enough employees filling the seats. There's limited chance for innovation or development in the role. And sometimes management doesn't appear supportive of any form of illness, whether that's mental or otherwise. There's also a lack of knowledge in respect of sickness absence management process and the tools available to support that process, and that's from both the line managers and the employees. So just a quick note about stress at work, because all of these risks could cause stress in the workplace. So the definition of work-related stress, depression and anxiety is a harmful reaction people have to undue pressures and demands placed on them at work. And stress caused by perceived problems in the workplace can eventually lead to an organic mental health condition, which actually requires more treatment and probably harder to deal with than stress. Stress should be managed carefully in work to prevent absence and the development of these other conditions. And the reason for stress in our organisation, or the risk of stress in our organisation, is generally caused by lack of empowerment, lack of decision latitude, lack of support, and the daily targets that can lead to a feeling of stress. So an organisation like ours can do all they can to prepare to deal with or to support somebody with a workplace stress or with any medical condition. But unless the employee tells their manager or somebody in the organisation, it's difficult to help them. So it's notable that an employee doesn't need to tell you if they have a medical condition or a workplace stress or anything that they're struggling with. But if they expect you to make any reasonable adjustments to support them, they will have to tell you why. It can be worrying for many employees, as they may feel that they'll be treated differently because of it. And actually, some research has been done and it's found that that's a valid concern, which is really concerning. But where the information is used appropriately, disclosure can allow the employer and employee to work together to allow plans to be made in order to prevent or reduce absence from the workplace. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to create the best environment to prevent people becoming absent with work-related stress, anxiety and depression? Well, the Health and Safety executives have come up with management standards to guide you through tackling work-related stress, anxiety and depression. And they focus around 6 central points. So it's relationships, demands, control, the employee's role, change and support. So things like making sure job demands don't exceed what's achievable, making sure employees have control over their pace of work, come into demands. Relationships about making sure that people are actually being appropriate in the organisation. Having a level of control over what they do is part of their role. Actually knowing what their role is. So are there job descriptions that somebody can look at and go, oh, this is part of my role. Oh, maybe that isn't. Maybe I should ask for help with that, or maybe I should ask if somebody else should be doing that. And support is really important. So employees need to know what support is available when they're not managing well, or if they just want to move on and do something differently. What can they find to help them? And that's especially important during a change process. So the organisation has to provide employees with timely information to enable them to understand what's going on, why things are being changed. And actually that's something this organisation doesn't do particularly well, especially in times of change. So in this organisation you can see that actually there's a lot of demand and there's not very much control, and the support is there but it's sometimes very difficult to find, and a lot of people don't know exactly what's out there for them. Understanding of a role is usually relatively simple within this organisation. There are job descriptions, but sometimes people are asked to do more than they should be. Relationships are usually pretty good. When people are being inappropriate, they are being dealt with. The problem with that is that people can't see what's being done to deal with any problems because it should be confidential. So you can see there that these are all things that this organisation needs to work on. And this is all something that will come up in a risk assessment. So part of the guide to tackling stress at work is to go through a risk assessment process and to see who's at risk and to see what the risks are and to put a plan in action to deal with those risks, to actually see how you're going to support the organisation as a whole, reduce stress in the workplace. One of the things that would be really useful to undertake once the risk assessment's been done, once people have been identified as at risk and what's going to be done about those risks, is to actually, you need to document those things, and a condition management plan or wellness action plan is a really good way of doing that with individual employees to make sure individuals are supported appropriately, because everybody's different. And they are a way to empower people to manage their own condition. They can include physical health and exercise, stress and anxiety management techniques, and relaxation techniques. The focus is always on work, so positive thinking about health and work and health and well-being in the workplace. And they should be designed with the employer and employee together. In terms of stress at work and the work-related anxiety and depression, Mind have put together a wellness action plan, and that was inspired by a wellness recovery action plan by Mary Ellen Copeland. Mind actually suggests that all staff should be offered a WAP, a wellness action plan, just because it actually writes down what support might be needed. They don't need to have a mental health problem or a stress problem to find benefit from a WAP. They should cover actions and behaviours that support an employee's mental well-being, symptoms, triggers and early warning signs, the potential impact of poor mental health on the performance of the employee, what support might be needed, actually where that support could be found, and positive steps that the individual can take. And reviews are really important, so agreed times for reviews should be on there as well. So what's next? What's my proposal? Well, I believe that we should look at the organisation using the Health and Safety Executive Management Standards approach to assess the risk of work-related stress, anxiety and depression. This will be done, it's a nice, easy, stepped process, and there's a lot, well, HSE provide a lot of tools online to support an organisation in doing so, including a survey to actually help identify those at-risk employees and the risks. The assessment and risk assessments would actually guide what the next actions would be, but from a brief run through of the tool, these are my suggestions. So there should be more education, and this education should promote the policies and procedures relevant to creating an appropriate environment. So that's the behavioural policies, that's the sick leave policies, that's the special leave policies, that's how you access the employee support line. You should provide regular opportunities to feedback about management. All line managers should have regular one-to-ones with their staff. Managers should be trained to complete the wellness action plan with their employees and one of our vocational rehab specialists if appropriate. Workload should be reviewed regularly, and that's workload against the number of staff as well, because workload might be alright, but if there's a load of work out there that's not being covered, then that staff member will be picking that up as well. And I think importantly, at the beginning of the process, so that's before we've even got into the HSE management standards, the stress at work focused training sessions for managers should be undertaken again, and actually that would be really useful for employees to see later on in the process. But that will allow managers, line managers, employee managers to know how to support their employees while going through the process of looking at risk and what can be done, as well as afterwards. So I think that's a really important factor in this process. So thank you very much for listening. I'd like to say that all what we can change our environment, and we can support people in the workplace, and we can prevent absence through using our in-house our available in-house resources. We've got so much that we don't need to go outside. We can use our wellbeing hub, we have assessment providers, we've got vocational rehabilitation specialists, we have fact sheets, we employ insurance nurses and doctors, and we have loads of online education tools. And that will make it really easy for us to go through these processes and to make sure our environment is appropriate for everybody. So again, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found it useful.